listen to a young girl who was saying that the African community here is totally very angry. Like,
was the so-called State of Niger Delta of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He went to several schools, his major academic emphasis was agricultural college, the Delhi, and
go gather, destroy their food. Make with camp. That other camp.
good evening, you're welcome to the program Green Planet.
Aggregate demand in the global economy is falling. This is impacting on growth globally. Africa, on her part, is facing a lot of economic challenges. The political economy in Africa is such that endogenous knowledge systems have been seriously neglected. But when one goes on the field, one is amazed at the levels of endogenous knowledge and development that can benefit from foreign direct investment or the flowing of capital. This is, however, not the case, as Africa is witnessing a shrinking of frontiers based on the lack of funds, the lack of the necessary capital to meet her ever-expanding needs, especially as it is a region that is fast-growing economically, as well as with its population that has clocked over 1 billion. African Center for Community and Development has been documenting such areas that can be validated as areas that need entry points for financing or for impact investing. This tire repairer uses endogenous knowledge systems to repair tires. He uses gari and fufu that is made out of fermented cassava in blocking the air vents which allow for air to leak in tires that are not functioning well. African knowledge systems are widespread and are very useful in small businesses. See a bubble showing where air is leaking, and that is where it needs to correct. As much as this creates employment, it is a very difficult task. It also takes time and it can affect businesses, especially transportation businesses that depend on tires that are not functioning well and that need to be repaired, or individuals like taxi drivers who definitely want spare tires or their tires to be running well in order to function well and to provide the services to their clients. When the job is done, the tire needs to be filled with air. So the white substance there is fufu is going to be using the fufu as a way of sealing the hole that the air within the tire escapes. So it's contraction of the fuel and some soap that is being placed within the tire in order that the tire can become effective once more. In this case. All this work in a backdrop of wonderful music. So apart from the fixing of tires here, some other tires are being sold as part of the business. Over there is more fufu and gari, probably gotten from a local restaurant or hotel as waste food. An innovative aspect of African recycling, which in many ways is unreported. However, that counts a lot in terms of the tire business in Cameroon and many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Now, air is being put into the tire. The tire repairer is trying to ensure that the tire has got 3 kilograms of air, which is the prerequisite at this time of the season in Africa for a car like the one he's repairing to run on the highway. While gari and water fufu are used locally as seals when dealing with tires that have leakages, it is also important to note that there is a possibility of creating products out of these traditional or endogenous knowledge systems. Here, impact investors can also provide other options of selling or transform the local knowledge systems into permanent products that can be found on the counters. They can also transform the machines that are using traditional knowledge systems in solving tire-related issues into more state-of-the-art machineries that can be valorized even globally. This needs capital to flow into Africa and for investors to work with local stakeholders in embedding businesses. Another area which can be valuable to impact investing is the sector of food, be it in the production of poultry, or in the production of snails, or in the production of ruminants. That can also be very important in curbing dependence on wildlife, locally called bushmeat. There are so many ways that impact investors can either invest directly or partner with local stakeholders, including communities and owners of real estate, in order to validate such businesses that are necessary within the realms of the 21st century and an expanding Africa in a backdrop of a global economy that is facing serious issues, including a fall in global aggregate demand, which does not allow for continual growth.
There are several reasons for this lack of global aggregate demand. One of them is this growing inequality, because when you people at the top spend a smaller fraction of their income than people at the bottom, and so when you redistribute income towards more inequality, you get less aggregate demand. That broad view that greater inequality is bad for growth and for stability has now been argued for by the IMF. I mean, this is becoming well established. There's a second one that is that when you have large global imbalances, the deficit countries have to cut back. You see that in Greece and other countries. The surplus countries don't have to respond symmetrically. And this is part of the point that Warwick said, that the differences across countries lead to very asymmetric responses. From a macroeconomic point of view, if the deficit countries are contracting and the surplus countries are not expanding, that's going to lead to a deficiency in aggregate demand. One way of, and the third aspect of this that's in some ways related is that there is a need right now for major structural transformations in a number of the most of the advanced countries, going from manufacturing to a service sector economy. Markets don't manage this kind of structural transformation on their own. And that contributes both to the inequality and to some of the asymmetries that I described before.
Yeah.
Bernanke, before the crisis, talked about there being a savings glut. I think he was wrong. If you look around the world and you look at the needs in infrastructure in most countries of the world, but particularly in developing countries, the needs for retrofitting the global economy to global warming, which are huge. If you look at the social needs for investment in education, technology, they're huge. So the problem is not the savings glut. The problem is that we don't have a global financial system that is able to take the surplus savings in China and Germany and Northern Europe, redeploy them into areas where there are very large global social needs. And the evidence that the global market wasn't working, financial market wasn't working well before the crisis, clearly the best use of scarce social scarce savings, global savings, was not to build shoddy homes in the middle of the Nevada desert. But that's where the savings were being deployed. So in my mind, this is another example of looking at the market economy from a global point of view. It's not working the way it's supposed to. It's not taking the financial markets are supposed to intermediate, take surplus savings and redeploy them to areas where there's a deficiency, where there are high returns. It didn't do that, and it's not doing that now.
Fundraising is also an important challenge in Africa and many developing countries. Many people are affected by the lack of funds for startups or for business expansion. Women are gravely affected by this. Foreign direct investments or impact investing can target women. In this short interview with women during Women's Day celebrations in Cameroon, it was highlighted that women actually misuse their own domestic funds. But within this backdrop, it was possible to establish the fact that women actually did not have access to financing, and that if financial institutions were established that could guarantee affordable loans for particular women businesses, the gaps between the men and women across Africa will seriously be curbed, and this shall lead to the mainstreaming of a class of consumers within the global economy, which is vital for growth, within a setup that is facing grave challenges due to the fall of aggregate demand, as well as the lack of a free-flowing capital towards countries in the developing fringes of the globe.
Good day.
Yes,
Thank you very much for talking to people, places, and events, and to the African Center for Community and Development. What is your name?
My name is Helen Bella Epusinjo.
And you've been working in the sphere of women issues. Can you tell me some of the activities you've done so far?
And so far, I've done so many activities concerning women empowerment. Around 2003, I had a seminar on female entrepreneurial, a one-week seminar on entrepreneurial activities concerning the women at the OIC Cameroon. And afterwards, around 2006, we had another women empowerment project in Meluka under the WIP, Women Empowerment. Yeah. So there we sensitize women on what to do, on women, on gender issues, and how a woman can become entrepreneurs in the future.
And so far, you are also a member of an organization. What is the name of the organization?
Scrub Projects.
And what is it all about?
It's all about, it's an NGO where we carry out activities, we empower women and we teach them what to do to help them to alleviate poverty, because in Africa and Cameroon in particular, women suffer a lot. Although they are rural women, they work in the farms, they produce their product, but they don't even know the essentials, what they are doing. So we always sensitize them to know what they are striving for in the future, so that if they put out their crops, they can, when they sell them, they use the money constructively to build the future of their children also.
And you're celebrating Women's Day in Cameroon. What do you think are the pertinent issues that women face, and what do you think can be done to redress them?
Okay, the pertinent issues that women face here is that women, most of the times, they don't know what they want. And most of the times when you want to sensitize them, due to their ignorance and sometimes illiteracy, because most of these women who work in the farm, they are not literate. Although when I'm saying literate, like I'm saying illiterate like that, it does not mean that I'm abusing them. But it's just that when you want to tell them, like for instance, Women Day, every time the government, they use women. When I say they use women, because the Women's Day uniform that they send out every year, they use women because they make them to use their money to buy every year. They will buy every year. They will buy. And at least for me, I see that if they can produce a uniform, one, like for instance the CPDM uniform, Cameroon people, the political parties, they have one uniform. So if they can produce one uniform that if you buy it a year like this, you can use it 10, 15 years. It depends how you can handle it. Most of the times they used to, like when they when they want to march, the women they ask the groups to pay 5,000 francs each, of which is not good. And a day like this is supposed to be a public holiday, and they say that they are giving it out for women. That it's the Women's Day, but it's not the Women's Day because they don't give us the day. At least when women, in the morning like that, we go to schools, go to your job site, work until after 12 before they liberate you to go and follow up the activities. To me, I see that it's not correct. At least the government have to redress certain things.
Now, research also shows that probably if the money that women spend each year to buy uniforms, for instance, was used to make a rural bank, an urban bank, and so on, it could help them more. For instance, they spend 5,000 francs to buy uniforms.
And to register groups.
Or to buy uniforms. And if 1 million women had to spend 5,000 francs, that's already 5 billion. That is possible to open maybe 5 major financial institutions.
Yeah.
So what is your impression? What do you think needs to be done? Does it need to come, the leadership needs to come from women who are emancipated and educated to help their other folks, or does it need to come from other civil society organizations or the government?
I think it has to come from other civil societies and the women themselves, because if they can put in place these financial houses to help the women, then they will help the women to alleviate poverty, because Cameroonian women or African women in general, they suffer a lot because they don't have financial houses that can help them finance their projects that they have. Yeah, most of them, they just go to the farms and do with the crude tools what they can do, produce what they can. But it's not most of them don't produce commercial quantities that can help them. But if you have these financial institutions that we can, then the government should abolish the 5,000 francs and put them in the financial houses. At least if you give a woman, let me say you give a woman 100,000 francs, it will help her a lot, because women are good, better managers. So we're calling on the civil society also to help.
Now, what will you advise men on this day that women seem to be reflecting on issues concerning them worldwide?
I will advise the men also to help the women, sensitize them, to help them, because most of the times the women usually have problems with their husband concerning finance. So they should help their wives to educate them, to tell them, to know that a day like this does not mean that women should go out drinking all the time. At least they should know that a day like this, you go to the public and give out your grievances, tell the government what you want, and tell the civil society that you have to reject this situation like this, and that will help us.
African Center for Community and Development, after testing the grounds, after planting crops like cassava, plantains, and pepper, and after surveying local subpopulations and their market needs, is very convinced that agriculture offers a very great opportunity for impact investing. Agriculture offers opportunities for farmers across the globe with capital to invest in organizations across Africa, including non-governmental organizations, as well as via partnerships with private stakeholders, including individuals and communities that own real estate. African Center for Community and Development is thus open to such partners that are willing to invest within her Green Cradle project in Cameroon, to partner with her in the production of food as well as in the transformation of food. Another key aspect of the food industry that needs impact investing is the biosciences. The biosciences offer opportunities in storing, in transformation, in transportation, in marketing of food in such ways that preserve the quality of the food, and that also lead to the situation where the food can reach the nooks and crevices of society, and that can also be a way that can create employment for local stakeholders, as well as help in assuring growth within the global economy.
When you are producing more food, you start to immediately think about how to process it, how to store it, how to transport it. You wouldn't have that conversation unless you are producing sufficient food and you're having a surplus. And so the next step is going to be the investment in the engineering sciences to make it possible for people to take advantage of increased productivity. So it's in a way stimulating demand for food processing. Rwanda, after the genocide, the first thing they did was to modernize agriculture. And Rwanda started to feed itself, having gone through a catastrophic crisis. The second example is Malawi, which has been able not only to feed itself, but in fact to start exporting food to other countries. And we're having examples of even states within countries like Nigeria, states that want to set food security as a priority, to be able to feed not only their own states, but also the neighboring cities, like the city of Lagos. And finally, we are seeing groupings of presidents, like the East African presidents met recently in Arusha to discuss food security. This is new. This is new. Previously, they talked about asking for food aid. Now they are talking about being able to feed themselves. I don't think there would be a future of African agriculture without investment in the biosciences. because the biosciences is really a core around which you are able to think about how to produce food. And then when you've done that, you can then think about processing. And that's what BioInnovate is really important about, is getting to the marketplace. And you can't get things to the marketplace without actually being able to transport them, without being able to store them, without being able to process them. So it's going to stimulate new industries that are linked to the life sciences.
Plantains, which is a subspecies of banana, has been identified as one of the crops that will be able to feed the world in a world affected by very dire aspects of climate change, including drought and desertification. It has been found that the African Center for Community and Development and the organization thinks it offers a great hope for impact investing, as many Africans consider plantains as a staple. It is eaten across West and Central Africa with soups. It is also used in the making of plantain flour and has been confirmed to have very high nutritive value, which is very important in a community like Sub-Saharan Africa affected by high rates of malnutrition and stunting and wasting. So this is plantains that we've harvested from the Green Cradle project of the African Center for Community and Development. We're about to carry the plantains to the market. It's our own way of trying to improve on food security in this part of Cameroon and Africa. We hope that it's going to get down to vulnerable subpopulations, and it's going to be our contribution from the center as well. So we're now to select the plantains so that we know the kind of price that we're going to give in the market, and to also make sure that it is affordable to the average user. So too is cassava, which is also considered a very resilient crop, which can offer a lot of hope and opportunity to impact investing. At the African Center for Community and Development, cassava has also been farmed. It can be transformed into a wide array of foods that are eaten in Cameroon and Sub-Saharan Africa, and the local population also needs cassava, not only in the production of fufu, of meals like bobolo, moyondo. It also needs cassava in the making of starch, as well as in the making of cassava flour, which is vital in the making of confectionaries. Impact investors must work closely with local stakeholders and with the African Center for Community and Development to be able to create viable partnerships or to invest in necessary areas that will lead to growth and food security in Africa. Here is cassava processing at the African Center for Community and Development. Investing in organizations like the African Center for Community and Development and in cassava farming in particular will create employment, will create jobs for women and youths that are most affected by unemployment in a continent like Africa. This actually is a key area that impact investing must revisit in order to empower these subpopulations and to reduce vulnerabilities as well as inequalities across the continent. Cassava can be used as feed for animals, as industrial feed is very expensive in Sub-Saharan Africa. This is an innovative solution at the African Center for Community and Development, as we use cassava that we planted at the Green Cradle project in order to supplement the diet of goats and to improve on food security in Cameroon by improving on access to proteins in a continent that is affected by high rates of malnutrition and undernutrition, and also impacted by diseases like HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. It is hoped that such projects will be supported by the international community in order that many more people will have access to valuable food in Africa. Investing in education, capacity building, and other forms of training is very important in Africa, with a high rate of graduation of youths that do not have a very strong professional training despite their qualifications. Education in Africa has to be oriented towards research, towards technological development, towards indigenous technological development, as well as towards international and well-recognized aspects of science. The educational sector offers a great hope for impact investing in Africa. It offers the opportunity to train women and youths, civil society organizations, small and medium-sized enterprises and companies, and hence it can also be a way via which impact investors can find or have leverage in Africa. People want quality education. Working with stakeholders, both private and public, and even the civil society organizations, to establish such viable training programs on the field will be a win-win situation for both the recipient countries as well as the companies and stakeholders that decide to invest in education in Africa and in developing countries.
The theme of this year's World Economic Forum on Africa is delivering on Africa's promise. While strong economic growth is boosting optimism about the continent's economic potential, serious challenges remain. One of those is education. With millions out of school and public education systems failing to deliver on learning outcomes, there are growing calls for the private sector to play a more prominent role in the sector. To discuss this a bit further, I'm joined by Tamara Minnick-Skokola, who is the president for Europe, the Middle East and Africa at Pearson. Tamara, thank you very much for joining me today. In a way, this is quite good news for a company like Pearson, that there are calls for the private sector to step in here to some extent, but it's quite a sensitive subject given the nature of the education sector. What really does the role of business need to be here? What do you see as the way these, the public and private sector needs to come together?
Thank you, Larry. Actually, the need for access to high quality education in Africa has never been greater. And therefore, while we've always worked together, governments, private sector, NGOs, the real word is collaboration. We must collaborate ever greater because everybody benefits. Families, communities, businesses, and ultimately government benefits from ever greater learner outcomes and a more educated population. And in an ever-changing world with an increasing knowledge-based economy and the education needed to deliver on that, it is increasingly important. And what does private sector add to that? What they really add is oftentimes they can move faster, they can take greater risks and therefore innovate more. They can raise capital and therefore take these innovations or new ideas that they're collaborating with governments to scale on a much faster basis.
Now, you've said that, public and private sector have always worked together, and you've used the word collaboration. But presumably the objective, of reading into that is not for the private sector to take over here, to sort of, replace the public sector. But then how exactly does that relationship, how is that relationship structured? How exactly do the two come together here in a collaborative way?
I really think it depends on the context and the country and the need. Often the government is our collaborator in looking at new education systems and new curriculum reform. It can equally be our customer as they look at the different products and services and how can those improve learner outcomes in the public sector. And equally, as we move faster and can often mobilize to create greater access, like our CTI and MGI universities down in South Africa, is they depend on us to invest in their country to increase access at a greater rate than sometimes they can invest to do so. If you look at education sector across Africa, actually it's behind the healthcare sector in getting investment. And so private sector can move much faster to increase and accelerate the investment level in good quality education.
For development to reach the nooks and crevices of society, or for it to have a basic nature that can be described as heterogeneous and affecting different subjects within community, it must seek to fight inequality, it must seek to fight income disparities, and it must advocate for a fair international trading system that allows for the possibilities of African farmers and other small-scale businesses to sell their products globally. This definitely needs a reform of global international trading laws, as well as for a holistic interpretation of development and markets.
The other thing I would suggest is that there should be a fair trading system, and we need to look at the subsidies that European and American farmers get, which often places the African farmer at a great disadvantage. Already, they are really living on the edge. The production of African farmer per hectare is a quarter of the world's average. And how do they then compete with all these rich farmers who, on top of it, get these huge subsidies?
Finally, village poultry offers a lot of opportunities for impact investing. Village poultry is preferred in Africa as many Africans think it is more tasty than fowls that are grown with industrial feed. It has been tested at the African Center for Community and Development, both meat-giving and egg-giving varieties, and it is hoped that international organizations will work with the African Center for Community and Development to improve on food security via fowls in village poultry, in particular, as village poultry remains the most important aspect of traditional and cultural rites in areas such as sackcloth removal ceremonies, marriages, and other initiation rites across Africa. Thank you for watching. It has been Arrey Ivo.
And this is what young girl was saying. The community here is totally very angry. Thank you very much for
of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He went to several schools, including your academic agency for government college to Delhi. And
Go gather, destroy their food. With the camp. And that other camp, second camp, you don't compensate everybody.
generation sometimes. Today our focus is being the style of teaching flag, a poet and writer, and we shall also be very interested in his poem Agro dancing. Meaning and riches of humankind. After some reasonably adventures and the war, one can still find footprints of the deadlines on the pavements of our contemporary life.
Good evening, you're welcome to the program Green Planet.